you know, maybe somebody mentions a writer, for example, and then a week later you spot that writer in the newspaper, and then, you know, somebody else mentions it, and then somebody talks about something that reminds you about one of the things that that writer has written about. And that, those kind of things, they're like a little pattern, and when you catch them, when you notice them, I like to pay active attention to them, active consciousness towards them. I like to follow it and see where it leads. And it's really quite remarkable that when you do pay attention to those little synchronicities in your life, how things just work beautifully. And it's been those situations when I've got what I've wanted, but the thing is, what I've wanted has fit in with it's hard to explain. A random example I can give you is that I woke up one morning with a thought in my head, and the thought was, I want to be a pine cone. Yeah, it means absolutely nothing, but I woke up smiling with the phrase in my head, I want to be a pine cone. Don't know where it came from. I have no idea what I was dreaming about, but it was just like, And I ended up Googling the phrase, I want to be a pine cone. And just to see, is there anyone else out there who ever woke up with that word in there? So where did it come from? Did I get it from somewhere? And when I Googled it, one of the results that came up, there wasn't a lot of results for it, I have to say. But when I did Google it, one of the results was, it was photography, and then somebody had put a poem underneath that related to the interconnectedness of everything and the oneness of everything and the deep mystery that is life. And it fit in perfectly with things that I had been, contemplating on. And then a different entry for I want to be a pine cone, courtesy of Google, was somebody's description of Taoism. And I was like, oh, that sounds a bit like following string, which is what I'm doing. Quite funny. And I hadn't read about Taoism at that point. A friend of mine had given me a book to read, and I hadn't finished it yet. So it was something that was current, and it fit in with other things, with the rest of the pattern. And a few weeks after that, a friend that I made via another series of coincidences recommended a book to me called Anastasia and the Ringing Cedars series. And I went and got the book. And before I did, I looked at their website, and their website is just covered in pine cones. It's like a little in-joke that goes on in life that's kind of goes on under your point of awareness, under your consciousness, under what you pay attention to. And when you actually do draw it up into focus and actually start paying attention to these little series of coincidences, it starts to become like a little in-joke. And it all leads somewhere interesting and positive. It's always led somewhere very positive to me. But that book, particularly the second one in the series, has ideas in it that I had been trying to explain to another friend of mine at that time. It was things that to me seemed obvious, but I was having difficulty explaining it. They were very kind of, I guess, metaphysical and out there ideas. And there they were in black and white, and I'm going, I know all this. It's eccentric as hell, but this writer that's saying the exact same thing that I've come to of my own conclusion, and they've come to of their own conclusion, and these things all happened within a matter of weeks. So there's a definite pattern to life that you can't put your finger on, you can't force it, but it's always there. And I think that when you go with it, when you flow with it, life works out remarkably well. Things happen that are positive, that lead you to new understandings and new people that are positive and good. So I think it's a little bit more, my experience of it is a little bit more, it's not so black and white. It's not so I'm going to sit here and think happy positive thoughts and all these happy positive things are going to come my way, because life isn't like that. Nobody is solely positive or solely negative. Everyone's a combination of both. And your behavior is a matter of choice, and your options, they're a matter of choice, and the state of the world is a matter of choice. It's something that collectively we choose to create by being in it, by doing things, by making decisions, by purchasing certain brands and you know, creating certain memes and ideologies. Everything we do and every choice we make has an impact on other bubbles and on their perception of the world and on the labels that they attach to you and society and themselves in relation to you. So we do create the reality around us, for sure. But to say that reality is affected purely by our inner frequency, our inner emotion, is to deny the impact of our words, our actions, our deeds, and our choices, because they have an effect on everybody. I know a lot of people watched Avatar and they absolutely loved it, but to me that's how life is. The whole universe, everything is reliant on everything else, physically and emotionally and spiritually. Everything is interconnected. So you can't just focus on positive thinking, but at the same time have negative action. And if your positive thinking is in pursuit of personal gain, then you're having an impact on those around you in a different way. So it's an odd one. The other odd thing with perception as well, the idea of positive and negative, it's entirely subjective, entirely based on your perspective and circumstance. The law of attraction is often aimed at increasing your wealth, but wealth can bring a whole heap of shit raining down on you that is anything but positive. So perception of something and whether it's going to be positive or negative before you get it means absolutely nothing. And likewise, during the course of something painful or having a difficult trauma to deal with, it has a negative side. It also has a positive side. Some of the more difficult, trying things I've had to deal with, I am so glad of them. I wouldn't want to ever go back and just skip that part. And it's not just it makes me stronger, because that's often just reinforcing the bubble anyway. But it gives you an opportunity to get greater understanding of yourself, of situations, of life. It gives you a more varied time on this planet. And likewise, I would say that you can't have a high frequency without a low frequency, because the low frequency is what gives the highness its height. And for every up there's a down, and for every something there is a no thing, and every peak of the wave has a trough to the wave. One creates the other. So I think it's much more healthy to accept that and just ride it like you mean it, rather than want to only experience one aspect of life, because you're missing out. And I know that sounds bizarre, that the bad things in life are something that you don't want to miss out on, but I wouldn't. And I'm sure anyone else who's been through tough things would, if they've addressed them and actually really looked at them and really, gained something from them, that it's often the really big gains that you can get from something like that. Empathy is born out of pain. You can't understand what someone else's pain is like unless you have some point of reference to compare it to. So pain is a good thing in that respect. I find the laws of attraction an odd concept, an odd theory, an odd way of thinking, because it on the surface looks like a positive thing to do, but it's only a positive thing to do for yourself. And I had a discussion with somebody recently about the whole idea of frequency, and the idea that people will drag you down because they're on a low frequency when you're on a high frequency. Me personally, I feel a certain responsibility to try and help other people raise their frequency. And I know that whole idea of just walking away because someone's in a bad place. Sometimes you have to, because you can't help them. At the same time, I don't think it should be the first port of call, the first choice. I think sometimes there's something that you can say or do that's going to just ease the tension on their bubble a little bit, because that's what you're looking at. You're looking at them in a bubble, their perception of something, and it's something that everyone is stuck with. until the day that they become enlightened or die. They are in the bubble. Bubbles will burst at some point,